Let me just let me click go live on our.
Yep.
Okay, let's bring the volume down here. Good, so that way we can see comments. So perfect. We got. Okay. Oh, you know what I wanted to do was I wanted people to know. I guess they could just send us questions as they go. But well, if you guys are logging on right now, you obviously you see us here, and we wanted to talk about the new Supreme Court decision. We're gonna just give a minute for other people to get on because I know other people are interested in this.
Yeah, we'll talk about mainly the this Arizona Supreme Court decision that has come in order today. Hasn't come into effect today, has come in order today, and we'll talk about really the implications in our field of reproductive health. There are so many more implications, but I think that's largely what we'll try to talk about today.
Yep, and I'm gonna put on here as a banner just for people if you want to don't join. And I'll add that banner. Let's see, to join. Although I can make that a little smaller, but there we go. You can go on to there and you can join us if you want to actually come on the show and talk. This is gonna be a very short show, so I want to make sure people know that I have tacos I have to eat tonight, so it's really important for me to get done in a reasonable time. So we're probably gonna wait about another minute or two, and then we'll start talking about things. But just so everyone knows, what happened today was the Arizona Supreme Court ruled that the old 1864 law on abortion will go into effect. So those who aren't aware, prior to Roe v. Wade being taken down, the rule of the land was 24 weeks to viability. You could have abortion, and that was true everywhere. Many states were trying to reduce that, and they couldn't get away with abortion bans, so they came up with bans for periods of time. And one of those times was 15 weeks. And Arizona was one of the ones that decided to make a 15-week ban. What's important to understand about that is the 15-week ban did not say abortions are legal in Arizona. It was basically trying to make a law around Roe v. Wade and saying, okay, we know the law of the land allows abortions, but we're saying we want it to be 15 weeks and we want to try to fight this. That's where 2022 law came into effect. But there was already a law in effect from 1864 that was a total abortion ban. And so when the 2022 law went into effect, it didn't get rid of the 1864 law. And so when Roe v. Wade went away, at that point, the 2022 law kicked into effect. And like you and everyone else, we just assumed that supersedes 1864 law. But because the 2022 law does not make abortions legal to 15 weeks, it's just trying to restrict them to 15 weeks. The original law that banned it goes into effect. And that has been argued for some time since Roe v. Wade. And today, the Arizona Supreme Court said that, yes, the 1864 ban could go into effect. And the reason why we're going to have this discussion today and explain it to you is because in Alabama, something like this happened, but this is completely different, which we're going to talk about. So you don't have to be as worried. But in Alabama, they had a law that actually prevented abortions both in utero and in that situation, there was like no exceptions. And so, and whereas in Arizona law, there are exceptions. So when that kicked in, it basically hurt all the fertility clinics. Everyone was worried about it and everything just stopped. That's not going to happen here, which we're going to go over, but at least if you're coming in, at least you know what we're talking about. So let's see, it's 5:9. Okay, so we'll start here in just a minute. If you have questions, please feel free to put them in. If you want to come on, we're more than happy to talk to you. But again, we have to keep this somewhat short because I have a lot of tacos I have to eat tonight, and I still have to finish my Taco About Fertility podcast, which is on Rescue ICSI tonight. So that's gotta get those things done. So Dr. Salem, you wanna start first by just kind of talk about what we talked about and why, we can start talking about why no one really needs to be worried right now. And I think most important for people to understand is it is not in effect. So it's very important to understand this has not gone into effect. There is 2 weeks before this even goes into effect, which is there to allow things like, talk about it and even to appeal it. So there's a very good chance that can happen. So nothing is going to affect, like where the Supreme Court one that went into effect immediately that day. This is 2 weeks before anything can happen. So the dust can settle. We can figure out other things too. But anyways, I'll let you kind of talk about it for a second. I'll look at some of the questions that are coming in.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right, Dr. Amols. I mean, I think, a big part of what we're focusing just this quick, live session on are the implications as they impact reproductive health and mainly, fertility care. And that's just such a small subsegment of everybody who's affected by a law like this. So we really want to kind of keep it narrow, keep it just to talking about that. Obviously, many other things that are very important, and I don't want to discount any of those. Those are extraordinarily important for women's health and women's rights otherwise. But I think what I wanted to kind of review with this law, which was very, in some ways, very similar to that previous Alabama law, is that this is a law that was written into place more than 150 years ago. So we got to take ourselves back a little bit to when this law was written to kind of understand a little bit of why it sort of doesn't make any sense in our world of IVF and, very modern medical care now. Just to put some context around this law was written before Arizona was officially a state. This law was written more than 100 years before IVF would have first been introduced. And so to kind of imagine how any of these things would have kind of coincided or impacted each other at the time that this law was written was nowhere on their radar, of course. This current law does say that effectively all abortion is illegal, and it is illegal with prosecution of both what would be considered the patient or the woman who is pregnant, as well as the physician or the provider who would be facilitating the abortion in any way. Now, this does not refer to personhood, and maybe Dr. Amols, you could kind of tackle that a little bit here in a second. But personhood is a very different thing and a very different kind of set of laws, and has different implications, especially as they relate to fertility care. Where we certainly see this affecting our patients are the instances in which individuals may become pregnant and decide that they need a termination for one of a whole host of reasons. And then this law, if it stays in place, would make it effectively impossible, illegal. Now, an interesting thing that emerges immediately, has already emerged in the media, is that the Attorney General is already saying that she would not prosecute for this law. So we can see there's initially a lot of kind of confusion around these kinds of things. There's almost certainly going to be an appeal. There's talk about other things going into effect later on in the year to make this law, let's call it, irrelevant. But as of right now, the way this affects our patients is that once they become pregnant, as things go downstream from there, then this law, of course, has very major and very real implications. But yeah, maybe Dr. Amols, tell us a little bit more about how does this change from a personhood law or kind of any of those perspectives that you have there?
Yeah, I mean, I always tell you I love law. It's actually one of the reasons why I actually want to apply to law school someday. And so I think it's important to understand there's no laws being made. So as you're pointing out, there's no personhood law here. All this is a law that's been on the books since 1864, and the law that we had, and even I thought the law in 2022 was kind of the law of the land for Arizona, not realizing that it wasn't an abortion law to allow abortions to 15 weeks, but there was actually one that said to curtail abortions to 15 weeks. And so that's where all this problem's coming from. Personhood laws, as we talked about before, it gives embryos, or should say even babies, personhood. So it means even a baby at 5 weeks theoretically has the same rights as you. And so it creates some issues. And I think one of the things that is best said by, again, I always love quoting Thomas Sowell, is good intentions sometimes have bad consequences. And so whatever the reason was for the ruling of these things, when people make personal laws, the intent is usually not to affect embryos. And so I think one thing for people to understand is it sounds scary. And I'm sure if you read online, you would think it's very scary. But if you looked at what happened in Alabama, right away, all sides of the aisles, right away, we're like, we got to fix this. And I think the same thing is going to happen here, because this was actually fought after a while ago, and no one was enacting the 1864 law. It wasn't until it got pushed all the way to the Supreme Court, and then now they're enacting it. And a lot of people will be frustrated and say, well, why would the Supreme Court do that? But again, remember, they don't make laws, they just interpret it. And so they're just interpreting it. And so in Alabama, right away, they put in laws to get rid of it. And that's basically all that has to happen here, is that if our lawmakers say, oh, this is affecting other things, they just have to go and repeal the 1864 law or create something else. And then, as you mentioned, most people are even going to prosecute this because it's just not, acceptable by most standards. But I think the most important thing we wanted to come on today to explain is this is not Alabama. It's not even close to Alabama. There is no personhood status here. The only thing that this is going to affect is that if you are pregnant and unfortunately need to have a miscarriage, you might be in limbo right now. And again, not this 2 weeks, but 2 weeks later, you might be in limbo, and hopefully this will get appealed and figured out before then. But when it comes to embryos, for example, I was looking at Audrey on here. She was saying that she's in California, so it doesn't affect her. But her question was, should she be worried, about making decisions right away? Absolutely not. Even if they were in Arizona, there would be no fear. The problem that happened in Alabama, where people weren't even allowed to move their embryos out, that is not a fear, because again, it's not giving personhood. So there's no risk to us as clinics. There's no risk to you as patients. One other thing someone asks is, well, what if I move my embryo to another state? Again, the important thing to come away from this conversation is that it will not affect fertility in Arizona. Now, it doesn't mean something can't come up in the future, but there tends to be a general consensus that no one wants to mess with fertility. It brings life. So the contention that occurs with things like abortion stuff aren't the same here. And so nothing to worry about right now. We'll definitely keep people up to date on what's going on if anything changes. But the most important thing I think that we really wanted to get out to everyone was, don't be worried. This is not going to affect you right now. It won't affect anyone. There's no personhood law here. And falling back to the 1864 law, the reason it won't affect you like the Alabama law was the Alabama law had personhood built into it, whereas there is nothing built into the 1864 law to allow personhood at this time. What else do you think to add? So I'm just looking for any questions. I don't see any with any questions right now other than the ones I addressed. I mean, in the end, you and I both know this is crazy. This is one of the reasons why we wanted to come on. I really want people to feel reassured. You do not have anything to worry about right now. If you do, trust me, we'll be the first worried. If I thought in 2 weeks we'd be in problems, all your embryos, as we talked about the plans, would be then shipped off to another place outside of Arizona. But that is not the issue here. And see if you have any other closing words or things you want to bring up. And if anyone has questions, please feel free to send them through. We will answer them. But we didn't want to harp on this longer than it needs to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think at the forefront of all of this is just like you said, Dr. Amols. I mean, this is kind of another part of this wild ride, and of course, we are primarily women's health doctors, and we are here to protect our patients, and here to take care of their fertility needs and take care of building their families, and to do everything to honor that. So I think it was top of mind for us to come on and just say that, from the narrow lens of reproductive medicine, and we're not talking about all of women's health, all of OBGYN, we're talking about the narrow lens of reproductive medicine. There's no immediate implication that would compromise the care up until the point that woman is pregnant. And of course, many things happening in the background, and we're keeping our ear to the ground very closely here to see what's going to continue coming of this new ruling, and hoping for, of course, a path forward that is very protective to our field and to reproductive health and medicine.
Yeah, and I think, on that same point, I mean, keep in mind there are when it comes to abortion, because again, we're focusing on fertility because that's what everyone's worried about after the Alabama case. There still is some potential victims here, and that's going to be the people who might need abortions. It's important to understand that emergency abortions are still allowed, and so are certain cases here. So I don't want people to think there's zero, but unfortunately, right now, after these 2 weeks, if this is not fixed, we're going to have to tell our patients either to go to California or somewhere else to have abortion if they need it. Obviously, it's a little bit different spectrum than on the fertility world because we're trying to all get pregnant. But, there are situations where it's even needed. And, like I said, there are going to be real consequences from this. But at least for our community, they can feel very comfortable that they don't have to worry about their embryos tonight. And they don't have to worry about any clinics closing down overnight like they had to in Alabama because fortunate enough for us, we do not have that personhood risk that was on with that case. Well, yeah. Since we have no other questions, I'm just taking a look here. Do you have any questions on your side on your Instagram? I answered some of the ones that were here.
Yep. Nope. I think we've answered all the ones that have popped up. They kind of were things that we've addressed in our conversation. So certainly feel free to message me or to message us, and we will do our best to continue communicating what we know about the issue as it moves forward.
Absolutely, and if people just know that everything is safe, and if you have questions, please reach out. But hopefully this helped reassure a lot of people. Because it did seem very, very similar to the Supreme Court one of Alabama. And so I can understand of everyone's fears at first. And so we just want to kind of nip this in the bud right away, make sure everyone's, understands what it means. And if anything changes, we will let you know and we'll get on live again.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for being here. And hopefully you guys can join us tomorrow on our actual show about sperm meets egg tomorrow. We're going to be doing egg freezing and talking about that. And like I said, look forward to seeing everyone. Dr. Sam, thanks so much. I appreciate your time tonight. I'm going to go now eat a bunch of tacos. So I'm excited. And hopefully you guys are having a taco in hand too, and you guys are eating.
Wonderful. Great seeing you, Dr. Amols. See you, everybody.
Have a good one, Dr. Amols. Bye-bye.